All right. Let me send out the Discord. Is my audio working? Okay. It seems fine. I remember I keep messing with it, especially during the Undertale playthrough. But hopefully it's okay now. Let me go to this. At this point, I really should have the notifications automated, but it's fine. It's fine. Yo, what's up, Enderman? Sig Enderman. How's it going? Wholly unexpected. It is wholly unexpected. Yo, what's up, your? Good evening. Good evening. Yeah, no, normally on Thursdays I go bowling, but that is not happening today. A couple of other people on my team decided not to go, and I'm on the brink of being sick. I'm not sick yet, but I can tell that it's getting there. So I feel like that was a good excuse to just not go. It's going pretty all right. I've been considering buying a used saxophone. Really? Just on a whim, you decided to pick up the saxophone? Or is this is this a thing that you've been doing before? Let me switch to the screen. Okay. Let me zoom in. Can I zoom in, please? Control plus is not how you zoom in, apparently. Alright, there we go. We have embiggened. I've been thinking about this for a few months now, but I can't seem to pull the trigger. That's fair. My brother played tuba in high school for a while. So I would imagine those kind of instruments are relatively expensive, but I have no idea. As for what we are going to be doing today, so this is the project that I've done at least once on stream. I don't remember how many times, but I am trying to create a roguelike where the effects of the items themselves are randomized. And in order to do that, I need to create a very generalized, very abstracted roguelike system. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Yo, what's up, Literate? And Clortax, how's it going? Cringe tuba sucks. Damn, okay. Don't buy a tuba then. Maybe saxophone was the right call. Fair warning, it takes a year to learn how to blow correctly. Oof. Okay, so I've got all this stuff on the side here. So all of this was from a previous implementation. That's fine though. So we're gonna scrap basically all of this. we're gonna start over here. Maybe I can keep some of this stuff actually. The core I might have to mess with, but like. Yeah, get rid of this. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. We are starting over. Congrats on unselling the saxophone. Let's go, starting from scratch. Yeah, it's only like the 10th time that I've started this project from scratch. It's fine. So, the idea. Let me pull up a document so that I can write this down somewhat visually. Here we go. Whoop, open it, please. Okay. Here we go. Flashbang. Can I make this dark mode? It does not appear to be a setting. Okay, well, we're doing light mode shenanigans, I guess. Sorry, flashbang. Oops. Give me... Oh, whoops. Okay. Yo, what's up, Glitch? How's it going? Someone I played with bought a C tuba for like 15,000. Jeez, dude. Father used to play and told me that. Justin wanted to warn you like he did me. What happened to you with the sax? What kind of gameplay is it based on? Deck building? Shoot? I don't know what that is. Oh, shooter, sorry. It's very much based on rogue. So when I say it's a roguelike, it's like an actual roguelike, not like, the fake kind of roguelike. It's not a roguelite. It is very much based on rogue. So, grid-based turn... Well, I don't actually know if... I assume rogue is turn-based, but at least grid-based movement. And mine is going to be turn-based as well. Not a roguelite, yeah. It's funny, official Google Docs dark mode exists, but I think it's a mobile app exclusive. Bruh. Okay, let me zoom in on here. So, I don't actually know if any of this is still relevant. But let me do the classic page break, and then we can start anew. So the idea. So let me say something other than let me. Let me start from the beginning. So creating a system that handles reactionary effects. In other words, if you have an item that says, after taking damage, heal 1 health, right? Or like after attacking for at least 5 damage, increase the amount of damage that you deal by 1. Something like that, right? Where the effect of the item happens after something, right? In the first example, you lose health, and then something happens after. Or you attack something, and then something happens afterwards. That making a system that handles reactionary effects is relatively simple. Things sort of explode in complexity as soon as you try to... Oh, shoot. I need to get my bot up and running. Okay. Sorry about that. Things sort of explode in complexity as soon as you try to implement what I've been referring to as intents. Which is like, imagine an item that says, anytime you would take damage, reduce the amount taken by 1. Right? So like tungsten rod in Slay the Spire, for example. That's an effect that happens before anything else happens, right? Like, it's not, oh, you take the damage, but then you heal 1. It's just that you didn't take that 1 damage in the first place, right? So something has to happen before a value actually changes. And creating a system that elegantly handles that is not an easy task. Let me real quick get that bot up and running. Apologies for that. It's been such a long time since I've streamed. I completely forgot how to even do this. I should just have a little script thingy that I run. That would make things so much easier, but I make things so much more complicated than they need to be. What are we doing? Sorry. What? Is it this? Okay. Okay. This might take me a couple seconds. No, not that one. Okay. Okay. The bot should be working now. Let's hope that it is. Okay. Flashbang, sorry. Genuinely interested if you ended up trying and confirming the year thing. You could do file, page setup to change page color. File, page setup, page color. What does that look like? Oh, that's not terrible. Okay, stop. Go away. Stop. Make the box disappear. I just want my cursor to be right at the end without there being a stupid suggestion. Oh my god. Okay. We'll make it a... that's not much of a difference, is it? Whatever. It's gonna be white. Sorry. You're just gonna have to deal with it being white. I know that's not a color everybody enjoys, but gotta give it a chance this time. Never did get into any instrument. I'm not a musically talented person. Best I could do is some self-teaching on piano. I've been considering buying a keyboard to piano. I've tried playing piano a couple of times, and like I was taking lessons at one point, but it never ended up like, I don't know, the way that that program did lessons was really weird. It was like Simply Music or something like that was the name of the program, and they didn't like teach you how to read sheet music. They just taught you which buttons to press on the keyboard, and it was like, this doesn't really feel like I'm learning piano, you know? I don't think you need to be a musically talented person to try and play a bit. I mean, I'm certainly not one who'd devote his personal time to an instrument entirely. I am interested in a billion different things, so I can't solely dedicate myself to one. Makes sense. But yeah, I feel like just messing around with the keyboard is kind of fun. My hyperfixation changing every 2 weeks never allowed me to commit to it. Okay, cool. The bot worked. Stonebot, please help. I'm trapped in Stone's basement. Brother, I live in an apartment. I live in an apartment. It does have a basement though. So the idea for this, so like I said, making a system that can handle reactionary effects is not complicated. Making a system that can handle, preemptive effects is wildly complicated. Apparently, at least to me it is. So, first thing we got to take into consideration is something like a swap. So, actually, let me start with a couple of scenarios that I've been using to test different designs. So, scenario one. Imagine a dungeon, a very small dungeon, a dungeon that's exactly 3 tiles, and they're all in a line horizontally. 3-tile dungeon, right? And you've got the player on tile 1, the far left tile. You've got, it doesn't matter, I'll just call it an enemy. It's whatever creature on tile 2. And then you've got a trap on tile 3, right? So going from left to right, you've got the player, an enemy, and a trap, which is just something on the ground. Almost knocked over my water. It's just something on the ground, so it doesn't take up the tile space, so things can still move onto that tile. So it's just imagine a bear trap almost, except this one is going to be magical. So the player has an item. Player has item that says when you take damage, teleport to another random location. The enemy has item that says when a creature attempts to swap places, deal 1 damage to them. And then the trap says when a creature moves onto this tile, teleport them to another random location. So this is the setup that we've got. We've got player, enemy, trap. My camera might be flipped, but for this is left to right for me. The player's got an enemy, or the player's got an enemy. The player's got an item. So when the player takes damage, it's going to teleport. When anything tries to swap places with the enemy, it deals damage to them first. Yo, what's up, Dom? How's it going? What's up, motherfuckers? How's it going? And then the trap says, anytime a creature moves onto this tile, teleport them to another random location. So you can see what's about to happen, right? Player attempts to move or to swap with enemy. So this is going to trigger a sequence of events. So the player is going to attempt to swap with the enemy. That event has 2 components to it. The player's X coordinate has to change, and the enemy's X coordinate has to change. So the first idea that we have to account for is the fact that multiple single values can change in any particular overall game state change. I'm also going to be using the terms stable state and unstable state, which is basically an unstable state is any game state where there are unresolved effect. Right? So, like, the player is attempting to swap with the enemy. This is an unstable state now because there's still this effect that has to happen. Before the player had attempted to swap with an enemy, that would have been a stable state because there's nothing to process. The player can, user inputs can be processed in a stable state. In an unstable state, there's still stuff that needs to be calculated. So, going from state to state, there can be multiple values that need to change simultaneously. That's the first idea. So, when the player attempts to swap with an enemy, we can't just immediately swap them because the enemy has this effect, or an item that has that effect, right? So there has to be some kind of I'm going to call it a proposal. There needs to be a proposal that says, hey, I would like to change the game state in this way. Here's your opportunity to react to that. At that point, this effect takes place, right? So player takes 1 damage. Or maybe I should phrase it, enemy deals 1 damage to player. There we go. Right? So keep in mind, the swapping thing hasn't happened yet. We're still in the proposal stage. So the swap is still being proposed at this point in time. My God, this man has planned it all out. Brother, this is I'm not even joking. This is the 7th time I've tried to make this exact system starting from scratch every single time. I have no guarantees that what I'm about to come up with will work, but I feel like we're slowly coming to a conclusion. We'll get there eventually, I'm sure, but this is taking a while. Also, Dom, thank you for the subscription. I forgot to say that. Really appreciate it. Okay. So the swap is still in the proposal stage. The enemy needs to deal 1 damage to the player, which also has to go through all of the steps that I'm about to state, right? So there needs to be a proposal to deal 1 damage. That proposal needs to be sent out to the system so that anything else can react to it. Then once that gets approved, right, everything is all right, that sounds good. You can deal 1 damage to the player. Excuse me. The damage actually happens, right? So the player's health actually changes. And then again, the system gets updated and says, hey, the player's health just changed. Now is your opportunity to react to that. So, okay, the enemy deals 1 damage to the player. Once that happens, in that final step where it's okay, the player's health has changed, now is your opportunity to react to something, or to react to that change. That's when the player's item, that effect takes place, or happens. So when you take damage, teleport to another random location. So in this setup, again, there are 3 tiles. There's the tile that the player's on, the tile that the enemy's on, and the tile that the trap is on. The only valid teleporting location is the 3rd tile, is the tile with the trap on it, right? Because an enemy is currently occupying the 2nd tile, and we're teleporting to another random location, not just any random location, so it can't be the same location. Only valid location to teleport to is the 3rd tile. So, after the enemy deals 1 damage to the player, player teleports to tile 3. Again, that goes through all the same stages. The teleporting, or the location change of the player gets proposed. That proposal gets sent out into the system. The system can react to that. And then the teleport actually happens. And then it gets sent out to the system saying, hey, the player's location just changed. react to it, which triggers the traps effect. When a creature moves onto this tile, teleport them to another random location. So at this point in time, the player is now on tile 3, the enemy is on tile 2, the only valid teleportation location is back to where the player initially was on tile 1. So, player teleports to tile 1. And again, goes through all the same steps, the proposal gets sent out to the system, the change actually happens, and then the change gets sent out to the system. At this point in time, everything has resolved. There's no other effects to resolve, except for the pending swap that initially happened. Right? All of this started because the player attempted to swap locations with the enemy. The question is, because the player has changed locations since the swap attempt was proposed, should the swap still happen? Or should it be canceled because the player changed locations? In my view, I think that the swap should not happen. I think that because the player teleported, it doesn't make any sense for the swap to continue to happen. And there are some slightly more complicated versions of this kind of a scenario. But the idea is that a proposal to change the game state, right? This is in the proposal stage. A proposal can potentially trigger a sequence of state changes that make the proposal invalid. Cancellation, exactly. So, there needs to be a step in the proposal process that allows for the proposal to be canceled. Or like validated in some way, right? Like you need to say, hey, this proposal has been sent out to the system and we're ready to move forward, but is it actually valid? Should we actually should we actually make the change? Right? So not only, well, I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, that's scenario 1. I'll just say swap should not happen. Canceled. 1 L, 2 L's? Am I British? Am I not? I don't know. Okay. It's been 7 years. Yeah. By the way, I can make art for this roguelike. I think I can figure out a system for visually displaying items. Yo, that'd be sick. Art is something I've only vaguely thought about for this game. I think it's going to be interesting. But yeah, if you can figure something out, that'd be awesome. How long should each step be visualized for on screen? So that's a completely different problem. So, we can track all of the effects that happen, right? Like you can have animations tied to like anytime the player's health changes. If it changes, like if it decreases, then you can play some kind of generic damaging animation, and then you can basically build up this giant queue of things that happened, and then the graphics thread can go through that queue and decide which animation to play and which ones it can play in parallel and stuff like that. That's a completely different problem. Right now, we're just trying to figure out how the underlying data should be changed. But that is a good question for another time. Maybe have like effect priorities. So some effects will always go before others and don't repeat. So in this case, it would be take damage, attempt to teleport, take damage from enemy, teleport, trigger trap, attempt to teleport, take damage from enemy, teleport to original tile, end. Yeah, so like I see what you're saying, but like we can use the call stack to have, things execute first, basically. If I understand what you're saying, basically like the swap is still in the proposal stage and we have to do all of this stuff. That's perfectly fine. We can just use the call stack to recursively call that whole system. That's fine. I'm fine with recursion. It wouldn't be instantaneous, right? Yeah. No. Well, so like the data changing would basically be instantaneous. I mean, the code still has to run, obviously. But the data changing would be basically instantaneous. And then you would just tell, what. In my head, I'm imagining two threads, right? One that's handling all the data updates, and then one that's handling the graphics. So all the data stuff would happen immediately, and then you could just queue up a bunch of animations based on that. Am I British? Am I not? Rung-like. Maybe if we first calculate every event that should happen, and then go one by one, already knowing the full list that could happen, and determine based on that list if a thing needs to be canceled step by step. I mean, part of the problem is that we don't know that ahead of time. Right, so let me get into scenario 2, and maybe that'll help a little bit. So scenario 2 is significantly simpler. We just have the player just has 2 items. Player has item that says when you are about to take damage, take 5 less, right? Just reduce incoming damage by 5, basically. Player also has an item that says when incoming damage is reduced, heal 1. Now, this is a significantly simpler scenario. That's the entire scenario. Sorry, I just smacked the mic. And then, player is attacked for 10 damage, right? Something like that. So now, when incoming damage is reduced, the system has to be informed that a proposal has changed. So any time a proposal changes, that also has to be sent out into the system so that anything can react to that happening. Because otherwise, this condition has no way of knowing what happened. Right? Because if we just have a proposal, we sent it out into the system can make changes to that proposal, and then we just immediately execute the proposal. This won't ever have a chance to check. So, we need to create a proposal. We need to send that proposal out for modification, like for the specific task of modifying the proposal. The proposal gets modified. Then we have to send the proposal modification history out into the system so that things like this effect can check that proposal history to see whether or not incoming damage has actually been reduced at all. After that all resolves, Then you have a verification step that says, hey, is the game in a valid state for me to actually execute this proposal? Right? So that we can stop things like two characters switching places. That doesn't make sense anymore. And if that passes, then you can actually execute the proposal and then update the system that the proposal has gone through, right? And that pieces of state have changed. So you can kind of see how, or like what I was saying before, when I said that making a system that can handle reactionary effects is easy, making a system that can handle intentions is significantly more complicated, because you have to give the system the ability to change the intent. You have to inform the system that intents have changed. You have to verify that an intent is still valid after it has been changed and after other things have resolved. It's a whole big deal. I think that covers everything. So that is the system we're going to attempt to implement. No guarantees on the quality, but we'll see. What's the solution for accidental infinities? Imagine this scenario, but with two traps that rearm an effect that heals you for teleporting. So that is also a question for a different time. Because basically, that's very similar to solving the halting problem. Because you can have arbitrary effects, it is very possible for there to be infinites. And to try and create a system that can detect infinites is like famous for not being possible. So there are things we can do to try and detect infinites, but we can't ever guarantee that we will prevent them. That's something that the game developer has to deal with, all right? That's not something that we as the roguelike abstraction developer have to deal with. Not our problem. So if I understand correctly, your proposal can also be sent as a hook queue. I don't know exactly what a hook queue is, but it sounds similar. Stone, why can't we just design a flight simulator? That would probably be easier. Honestly, probably, yeah. Where's the fun in that? Yeah, so many people have already made flight simulators. Nobody's made a roguelike. So, we're good on that front. That's very similar to the halting problem. It is the halting problem. I mean, yeah. I say it's similar because I don't actually know the exact details of the halting problem, but it's basically the halting problem. Just stop it after a certain amount of actions. We could do that. So, yeah, I mean, because this is going to be recursive, there's also the stack that is a limiting factor. So if there are, I don't know what the default call stack size is. I think it's like 25 million or something. It's probably different for different languages. I don't actually know what it is. It can't be as low as 25 million. I don't know why that number came to my mind. But there's the call stack size, which, if you've ever played around with recursion, you will be familiar with the Stack Overflow exception. So there's that. If you make too many If you have too many effects, then the game will just crash. That's a way of preventing infinites, right? The most original indie game genre, a roguelike. Exactly. Nobody's ever made a roguelike. It's not like there's a term for games that are similar to Rogue. That would be ridiculous. Okay. You can kind of see the remnants of that, of a similar idea, but it's not quite the same. So, to record, do we need that? I don't know. I'll get rid of it for now. Excuse me. Maybe stop if every variable that is not taken into consideration by the events goes back to the original state before the request. I don't know. That's possible, but then you get things like, okay, what if a billion events happen and at the end of it, everything except for one variable goes back to being the exact same, and that one variable just incremented by one? And then you have to do another billion effects for that variable to increment again. And then, you know. So it's possible that you have enough of those variables that you end up with effects, like effect chains that technically don't ever repeat, but could last a theoretically infinite amount of time. Not infinite, but like an amount of time longer than somebody's gonna be alive, you know? So I like the idea. Unfortunately, it doesn't account for everything. It can be as there's a hook that connects to an event, and when an event is fired, damage, heal, etc., the hook adds it to the proposal queue. Where Twitch, you need to stop messing with my chat layout, please. The hook adds it to the proposal queue, where on a valid check state computes the queue in order of events to see if they are valid effects or if they were invalidated because of a previous effect. I mean, that's pretty much what we're doing. Yeah. It's like the problem is with if it's just a queue is that things have to happen prior to that effect happening, right? There needs to be some kind of recursive thing going on. Otherwise, you know, the player and the enemy swapping in scenario 1, if it was just a queue, that would get fully processed first. When given the item effects, it would make much more sense for this to be proposed. Everything happen before the swap happens, and then only after this resolves, then we check to see if the swap is okay, right? So we need a little bit more than just a queue, because we need to be able to like insert things prior to whatever we're currently processing. How about we make it so we just don't get a billion events? How about we design the game around the code and just take the hit? That's the way that we're going to deal with this. Because, like, you know, if I really wanted to, let me just get rid of all this. If I really wanted to, I could just do this. Boom. There you go. I have made an infinite loop. You know, and adding, you know, this kind of weird state management thing that we're doing for the sake of creating a roguelike, that's not gonna magically prevent me from accidentally doing this. So it is still very much the game developer's responsibility to not make a system that can loop infinitely. So again, not my problem. But you are right. Maybe it starts to remove effects if they repeat too many times. See, again, that's possible. It's just then we're kind of setting an arbitrary limit on like how many times a piece of state can change, and depending on the video game that other people want to create, that might be an issue. And, you know, if we set it to like 24 billion or something, you know, absurdly large, then maybe it makes sense. Then maybe it's okay. But also, maybe the game developers should just not make a system that goes that high. Or if they do, they could implement that limit themselves, right? There's nothing preventing the game developer from implementing all of these suggestions themselves. What if we do a double array, we save the first 7 steps, then on the second array we save the other next 7 events. If they both match, it may be a cause of infinity, and we cancel the whole queue. See, again, what if there are 8 steps? What if the first 7 do match, but the 8th one doesn't? What if the first billion events match, but the billion and first one doesn't, right? So yeah, there are ways that you can account for certain scenarios, but there's nothing that's going to account for everything. And so you might as well leave that to the game developer to figure out. If they want that kind of a limitation, they can do it themselves, you know? When an event happens, there's a party, yay. Yeah, when the game state changes, everybody celebrates. Okay, so this is our basic element. A piece of state, aka a state piece. And it just holds whatever you want it to hold. You can retrieve the value, but you cannot assign it. This internal keyword means that code within this assembly can change this value, but any code outside of this assembly cannot. So my face is not covering this on the right side. It's kind of hard to see, but I've got a project here called Roguelike Framework, which is the project where we're going to be setting all of this stuff up. And then I've also got a project that's just called Test, and that's going to be our quote-unquote driver program. So in the Roguelike Framework project, we're just going to be creating the classes and creating the code and stuff, but we're not actually going to be like implementing any of the, you know, the state pieces or whatever. That's what the test program is for, or the test project is for. So in the test project, I cannot change the value of a state piece. Maybe I can show that real quick. Let me get my microphone wire out of the way, please. Thank you. Okay, so if I am using the roguelike framework.core and I say thing is equal to a new state piece, it's gonna get mad at me because state piece is technically abstract. Ooh. Okay, you know what? We'll temporarily get rid of that. How do I... There we go. Okay. So I can create a new state piece. Why is it mad at me? Okay, we'll give it the integer 100. That's fine, right? Surely. Is it getting mad at me because I have to cast it as an object? No, it's still mad at me. Why is it mad at me? What? Oh, because it's abstract. Oh, technicalities. Okay, can I create it now? Is that a valid thing that I'm allowed to do? Fine, I'll make it public. Happy now? Now you're happy. Okay. Okay, so we have a state. We have a piece of state. If I do console.write line thing, more importantly, thing.value. That is perfectly fine. It doesn't get mad at me for that. But if I tried to change the value, thing.value equals 50 instead, it does get mad at me. And it says the property or index or state piece.value cannot be used in this context because the set accessor is inaccessible. That's what this internal thing does. If I comment that bit out and then go back here, it's fine. So this internal just says, hey, any other project that's using the code in this project is not allowed to do this thing. Okay. Not what I wanted to do. Okay, now I can make it not public. So, that is our basic building block. We've got a piece of state where we handle the assignment. That means that when an assignment does happen, we can throw it through the gauntlet. We can put together a proposal. So I'll do a Toto here. Let's make this a multi-line comment here. All right, Toto. Assemble. How do you spell assemble? Jeez. Assemble the proposal. What was the next step? I have to send proposal for updates, and then send proposal for reactions, then validate proposal, then execute proposal, and then send state changes for reactions. Right? That was the thing. I think that was all the steps that we came up with. Okay. So we've got this manager class, and currently it just has this function, which this is fine. So we're taking in a list of state piece changes, which is this class here. A state piece change contains the piece of state that we're attempting to change and whatever we want to assign it to, whatever its new value is supposed to be. That looks correct from the leftovers. Okay. There are a couple of like C# things, like this params keyword that I'm using. If you want me to explain it, I can, but we'll just move forward with this. Stone is low-key top 1 explainer. Damn. Everybody? Everybody's worse than me? I'm top 1? 8 bajillion people and I'm the best, huh? I feel honored. I still don't see how changing positions affects the ability to finish. Swapping locations feels arbitrary. It is arbitrary. For this particular scenario, it is. This isn't like a general thing where it's like, well, okay, anytime a position changes, that should automatically cancel other location changes that had been proposed. Excuse me. That is absolutely an arbitrary thing that is specific to this scenario. But the point of that arbitrary decision being made here is to highlight the fact that we need some way of canceling proposals. Right. The whole point of this scenario is just to test that our system actually functions properly. Everything in this scenario is arbitrary, if that makes sense. Your power got hijacked by a stronger power. I don't know. I would love to keep discussing this, but I need to wake up early tomorrow. Best of luck at solving. All right. I appreciate you being here. It is a fun topic. This is something that I've put a lot of thought into. Like I said, I've restarted this project so many times. Wait, I thought we were making a roguelike. Not that you were making a roguelike system engine. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We got to take it one step at a time. Eventually, I am going to make a roguelike. But because the roguelike needs to be able to handle randomly generated effects, I need to first create a system that can handle any arbitrary effect. Obviously, infinite loops, as we've just discussed, are a bit of an issue. That is a problem for a different time. But I first need a system that can handle that, right? I guess we need the engine to make the game. Yeah, exactly. He's explaining it of the game dev taken care of, so it sounds like he is making the game engine, but not for himself. That's kind of the idea, except I'm going to be the one using the game engine. So I need to design the game engine as if it's for anybody, even though I'm probably going to be the only one using it. If it's a good enough, if I end up creating a quality product, then I'll probably, open source the engine part of it. But yeah. Because if I go into the mindset of this is specific for my game, then it's going to be significantly more difficult to handle any arbitrary effect that could be randomly generated, right? Add quote, when an assignment does happen, we can throw it into the gauntlet. Everybody's worse than me? I don't know. I'm not the one making that claim, I'll take it, for sure, but I'm flattered, of course. Okay. Let's propose. We'll make it a public proposal. Why not? We shall embarrass our partner. Okay. So a proposal is going to need a couple of things. It's going to need the initial list of state piece changes. And it's also going to need the entire history of state piece changes. Right? So let me just create a list. Would it be easier? Don't know what the easiest way to go about this is, but let me add a different class. Let's call it state chunk change. We have graduated from state piece changes, and we are changing state chunks. Okay. Public. Now this is going to be what holds the read-only collection of state piece changes. State piece changes, right? And let's just accept an enumerable of state piece change. Actually, this needs to be an iList, I think. iList. Yeah, state piece changes. Can we actually do something fancy here and extend a read-only collection of state piece changes? Okay. That should actually work. So now a state chunk change doesn't just hold a collection of state piece changes, it is a collection of state piece changes. Cool. So now a proposal needs to contain a list, and this is probably going to change, but for now it's a list. It's going to contain a list of state chunk changes. And we can call it history. I forgot how to spell history. I'm a programmer, not an Englisher, all right? Sure, you can be read-only. You can be public, too. Public, read-only. Okay. Oh, my God. It's, yes, fix the collection, initialization, whatever. Okay, so this needs to be something that things can access and only change via a certain function, right? Public void update. We'll put a Todo in there. And this is going to take, where's the menager? The menager, here we go. This is going to take an array of state piece changes. And what this is going to do is it's going to say history.add a new state chunk change given the state piece changes, right? Can I get away with taking away that name? I can, okay. And then sure, change it to an expression body, why not? Okay. So we've got this history, and we can update the history via this update where we give it a bunch of individual state piece changes. It will automatically shove them into a state chunk change and then tack it on to the end of the history. Now, currently the history is public, so anything could, add and subtract from the list. I need to change that at some point, but for now, let's just make a public state chunk change and say current. And that is just going to be history. Actually, yeah, there we go. So this little hat one basically counts from the end of the list forward. So this means like the very last item in the list. Hat 2 means the second to last. Hat 3 means the third to last. So the current proposal is whatever is the most recent entry in the history. That's basically what that means. So every time we call update, we add something to the end of the list. The current proposal is whatever's on the end. Makes sense. I'm going to add a Todo here. Make not public. So the reason that this is a little bit weird is because things have to have access to the list of state chunk changes. Like it has to have access to the history, but I don't want people to be able to just arbitrarily change what's in the history, right? Because as it is right now, I could go into the menager and I could say like thing is equal to a new proposal. proposal, and then I could say thing.history, and then I could like clear it, for example. I don't want to be able to do that from the manager. I want this history to stay the way that it is, but I still need to be able to do things like, okay, for, looping through the, why did it do that? I need to still be able to do things like loop through the history, to check for events. Whatever. Or history. What, you get the idea. History thing. History thing in thing.history. My finest code I have ever created. Shit just got 0 to 100 real fast. Oh, we are coding. I love how you say Toto. I mean, yeah. You put so many to-dos in your code that eventually you got to make it fun somehow. Otherwise, it just gets boring. Okay, so we've got a state piece, we've got a state piece change, we've got a state chunk change, we've got a proposal. So we can finally do this first step. Assemble the proposal. Actually, the proposal needs to be initialized, right? There needs to be something in the proposal first. So, can I just do this? No, it gets mad at me. Okay. Give me. Can I do this? That's not actually what I wanted you to do, believe it or not. No, give me a closing brace, please. Why is it? Oh my word. Okay, new open bracket. Holy. No, it gets mad. Alright, because I gotta throw this in anew, right? Okay, there we go. And now it's gonna tell me that I can make it cleaner by doing that. Okay, sure. You know what? Let's put this all on one line. Why not? We're writing code in C#. We can afford to make this one line ginormous. Okay, so in order to create a proposal, we first have to give it a bunch of state piece changes. And we are immediately going to throw those into a list. Or we're first going to throw it into a state chunk change and then throw that state chunk change into a list. So that we have our first entry into the history. Back to the Menager. We can now say proposal. Oh my god. My microphone being in the way is not helping. Give me a new proposal. And we shall just pass it the state piece changes. Cool. Now we have a proposal. We can keep track of the wrong P. We can keep track of the proposal's history. And that is this done. We have assembled the proposal. Now we have to send the proposal for updates. Excuse me. Stone, you've been coding so long that Toto be not in Kansas anymore. Toto, come back to Kansas with me. Yeah. Pronouncing this as Toto and me living in Kansas is kind of ironic. Okay, so we have to send the proposal for updates. The way that I'm going to try and do this, I can get rid of this actually. Yeah, get rid of that file. The way that I want to do this, I think, is through event handling. That feels a little bit like overkill though. But maybe it makes sense. Okay, how do you even do event handling again? It's like public event, event handler of type proposal. Say on proposal created. Sure, we'll make that nullable to get the green line to go away. And then can we just say on proposal created and then throw this in there? That's not what I wanted, proposal. Why is it getting mad? There is no argument given that corresponds to the required E of the event handler proposal. If I say this comma proposal, there we go, okay. So events take a sender and the actual arguments, which is weird, but that's the way that it works. Okay, so we can actually say question.invoke just in case there's nothing here. So like an event handler, this on proposal created, basically what that allows us to do. So if we go over into our test program and we say thing is equal to a new, actually, let me use the roguelike framework.core, and then I can say thing equals manager. None of these are what I wanted. State, what did I call it? State piece change manager. There we go. Give me a new one of them. Thing dot on proposal created. I can add to it a custom function. Sender arguments. Something like this, right? Toto. This is the point of an event. So I can just arbitrarily add functions to it, and then the functions will get executed anytime I invoke the event, which is what I'm doing here. But if there's nothing attached to it, if there's no function that's being added to it, then it's just going to be null. So I do this little check here to make sure that it's not null before I try invoking it. Okay, anyway. Send proposal for updates. So this is going to be the responsibility of the game developer to actually, like, you know, do something with this event. So this is pretty much all I need. Boom. I don't actually need to, like, handle that. I just need to say, hey, the proposal has been created. Here it is. I'd watch more, but I can't afford to sleep less than this tonight. Good night. All right. Have a good one. I appreciate you being here. You know, coding in general is like... honestly, it could probably put you to sleep. Coding is not the most engaging thing in the world. Okay. Now, let me just duplicate this. Now we need another thing. On proposal. I don't know. At this point, what is it considered? We need to send it for reactions. On proposal It's not created. It's just been like filtered, basically, almost. Maybe we can just say, I don't know, react to proposal. I'm stressing over the name of a variable. This is probably fine, right? I can always change it later. Okay, so similar thing, I can just say react to proposal, invoke this, and the proposal. And mind you, this proposal is going to change. Probably. I mean, it can change. That's the whole point, right? So the okay. I'm gonna change things here. Actually. Let's make this a proposal draft. Okay? So a proposal draft is where we can add new history things to it. Let me rename this to proposal draft. And then let's make the actual proposal, which is not going to allow you to actually make changes to the history. Proposal, and instead it's going to take a proposal draft. Right. So then this is going to be a public read-only. This is going to be a read-only collection of state chunk changes. Okay, this can be public. And then we're going to say this is equal to a new read-only collection given the proposal draft dot history. Let me get rid of that empty line. Okay, so an actual proposal is like set in stone. You cannot change it. Once the proposal is created, it's created. A proposal draft is going to be something that you can change. I think that makes sense. So then, in the Menager, we need to create a proposal draft instead. And then we can say here, on proposal draft created, proposal draft. And then this one is on proposal created. There we go. Now the variables make sense. Right. I swapped the names. Okay. So now we can say var proposal equals a new proposal, and we give it the draft so it can actually like set it in stone. Okay. So now when the proposal is created, it's going to get the actual like set in stone proposal, and it's not going to be able to change the proposal at all. When we create the proposal draft, it can change, right? Any of the code attached to this event can change it or can add things to the history in any way that they want. Yo, what's up, Vlad? How's it going? Have you considered making coding ASMR? No? I don't really feel like I'd be good at that. I would not be opposed, but I don't think that I'd be great for that. Yo, what's up, Davy's unofficial son? How's it going? Dude, how did I smudge my glasses like that? Okay. Okay, then that's fine. That'll work. All cool. What about you? I'm not doing too bad. I mentioned earlier, I feel like not sick, but like on the verge of being sick, you know? Like I don't feel bad yet. It's just I'm feeling not right. Feels like it's about to happen. But other than that, I'm pretty good. It's going well. About to do some mock BWR work. What is BWR work? But yeah, we're trying to make an abstraction, I don't know what the right term is. Generalization, abstraction of a roguelike system. Boiling water reactor. It's a type of nuclear reactor. Whoa. Yo. 10 stream streak. Nice. I don't know why, but why not? Dang, they only give 450 channel points for that? Come on, Twitch. Stop being so stingy with the crayons. Boiling water reactor. That sounds interesting. Validate proposal. Okay. This one, I don't think it should be an event. Because we need it to return a Boolean, right? We need it to be like, hey, is this cool? This cool with you? So do we just make it a function? Do we just say funk? Do we get funky and say it's got to return a Boolean and it takes as a parameter a proposal? So is proposal valid? Something like this. We can make that null. What? That's not how you do that. We can make that nullable too. And then down here, we can say if is proposal valid if it's null or is proposal valid, and we give it the proposal. Nope, not the proposal draft, the actual proposal. So if this function is null, actually, if the function's null, if the function is null, I am just going to assume that it is always going to return true. Basically, if the user doesn't define this function, I should just let everything through. I think. So how can I do this? Can I do this in an elegant way? I don't think so. Question.invoke. Yeah, I can't do the same thing there. Okay. So let me say, is proposal valid? If that's not equal to null, and we actually invoke it, and it returns false, then we can quit. Right? We know the proposal is no longer valid. We'll throw it out. It's a pretty fun project. What does it involve? Water, I assume, and probably reacting 250 is the second highest reward available, assuming no multipliers from subbing. Interesting. Okay, so it is actually a lot. First place goes to your first gift sub of the month, which gives 500. Wow. A 10 stream streak is like 50 crayons away from basically being a gift sub? Dude. The Twitch developers got to rebalance their system, man. This makes no sense. All right. So we validate the proposal. Now we actually have to execute the proposal. So let's for each it. And that is not actually what I want to for each. I want to for each the state piece change in the proposal dot current. So the current proposal, we loop through every state piece change, and then we can say state piece what just auto completed state piece change dot state piece dot value is not equal to true, is equal to state piece change dot new value. So this is where we actually execute the proposal. Coolio. So now we send the state changes for reactions. So this again is going to be an event, and it's actually going to take, we can just say it's state chunk change. Say on state change, maybe. Does that make sense? Not sure. But then down here we can just say on state change question dot invoke, and we pass it the proposal dot current. Why is this getting mad? Oh, because I forgot the this. Okay, there we go. Nuclear fission happens, generates heat. Heat goes into water around the reactor core. Water, now steam, goes through the steam line and into turbines. Some of the steam goes into the turbines and generate power. The rest of the steam goes into a condenser, which turns steam back into water. Water goes back into core. That's the basic loop. Interesting. I said it's a type of nuclear reactor. Okay. Interesting. I mean, I guess that makes sense. I've seen a couple of memes that are like, how many different times can we reinvent generating power based on heating water and just having steam go through a turbine? Apparently, it's not so trivial to generate power without just heating up water and making the steam turn a turbine. Or maybe that's just the most efficient way to do it. I don't know. And we did that. Okay. I think that's this main thing done. Let me just look through all these other classes, because I think, yeah, that's correct. State piece. State piece change. Should this be an abstract thing? Yeah, I think it's fine. I mean, it's a little bit strange, but I think it's okay. State chunk change is really just a read-only collection. That makes sense. Proposal draft. I still need to fix this bit. And then the actual proposal is just that. I feel like that makes sense. Most modern power is just Steam. What language is this? This is C#. Okay. How do I make this not public? Because again, we need to be able to like iterate through it. But we don't want to change it unless we're changing it via this update. I wonder how expensive it is to actually make a read-only collection. If I say, let me do this in the test thing here. If I say thing equals a new read-only collection of integers, what is this doing? Do not rename binary serialization. List equals list. Okay, so it is just a wrapper. So we're not like. Okay, so we're not like reallocating an entire array's worth of memory. So that should be fine then. If we go into, proposal draft, then we can say list. I mean, does it matter if I make it a stack? Variable size, first in, first out, collection of instances of the same specified type. Does it matter? What is a stack? Stack just extends enumerable collection, read-only collection. Makes an empty array. Okay. I'll have it be a stack in then. Or a stack then. First in, first out. Last in, first out. I read that completely wrong. Last in, first out. That is what I want. Okay, I was so confused for a second. But this is what I want. And then surely I can just add state piece changes, right? No. Okay. If I were to do public void thing and say history dot, like history equals a new thing. History dot, yeah, push. Really? It doesn't give me like a nice neat way of doing these two things? That's a little bit annoying. Okay, in that case we can't do this piece. We have to put it in a dedicated constructor here. Just fine, it's just annoying. Okay, so then history dot peak. This will need to be, let's make it private. Okay. And then we want to push the actual state piece changes. Cool. Push. Why is it getting mad at me? Oh, yeah, I can make it read only. Okay. And then I need to give access to so we'll say I read-only collection, except without the I. And now it's getting mad at me. Okay, read-only collection. There we go. This is gonna be _h so that this can be public. And then this is just gonna go to a new thing with _history. That didn't work. Why did that not work? Cannot convert from stack to iList. Oh, stack is not technically a list. Ugh. Fine. Fine, I'll go back to the way that it was. Being annoying. I mean, I guess that's okay, because now I can go back to this fancy implementation where I say that this is a new... Oh no, it was like this, right? No state piece changes. Yeah, okay. I could do that. Whoops. Okay. So now we've got this private list. .add. And this private list is where we make all of our updates. And then if anything tries to access, if anything outside of this class tries to access the history, they will get a read-only version of the history. Okay. I like that. I don't think that should have changed anything over here. Yeah, it looks fine. No red squigglies. We have so many ways to make heat that all have their own pros and cons, but then there's converting heat to power where the solution has been clear as water. Yeah. I mean, it'd be cool and interesting if there were more ways to convert heat to to heat to power, I guess. But you know, Miku Gaming, how's it going? What are you working on? I am trying to make an abstraction of like roguelikes. Oh, I called it. Yeah, that's fine. Eventually, I would like to be able to make a game where a roguelike game where the effects that the items have is random. Right? So like typically in a roguelike, you've got a pool of a bunch of items and all of the effects on those items are already defined. And then the items are, you know, randomly distributed throughout the game. I want to try and make a game where the effects on the items are randomly generated. So, I am attempting to create like a generic abstraction, I don't know what the right term is, but some baseline for handling any arbitrary interaction like that. What's the progress so far? I started from scratch at the beginning of the stream. So, not very far. I have started this project from scratch probably like 7 times at this point. Because every system that I can come up with, I eventually find an edge case where the system just completely does not handle the situation. Now, I'm not confident that this solution will work, but it is the next iteration of me starting from scratch. Okay. So we've got these 4 things that the developer has to now define for themselves, right? So on the proposal draft created, so this is basically like when the proposal can be changed. On proposal created is when you can react to the proposal being created. Is proposal valid? Make sure that the proposal, that the state changes in the proposal can actually happen. And then on state changes, like after the state changes. I think that makes sense. And then I've got this entity component system over here, which is in shambles because I haven't spruced it up since I restarted the project. Let's just yeet that. Entity Menager, we're yeeting this as well. Component, we'll yeet this. Okay, basically starting from scratch. Do you have a project set up in Unity? I am probably not going to be using... well, I'm probably not going to be using Unity for sure. But at this point in time, I don't think I have enough of a project to be using a game engine. We are doing it from scratch right now. And then eventually, once I get a system, then I might utilize a game engine for things like rendering and handling sound and stuff like that. But for like game logic, I don't really think it's necessary. Okay. Entity Menager, at this point in time, we can just leave it as containing a list of entities. Whoa, Twitch, please stop messing with my chat. Sounds cool. That's what I hope it turns out to be. I've restarted this project so many times. I'm almost convinced that it's not going to happen. But it would be cool. I agree, it would be cool. An entity has a list of components. Don't do that. That's fine. Dude, so I bought a laptop a while ago. And it came with Windows installed. And it's got the little, is it Copilot? Is Copilot the Windows thing? I think it is. It's got the Copilot button on it. Which is dumb because I installed Linux on that laptop. So that button doesn't even do anything. I mean, it does like do something when you press it, but it's got the Copilot logo on it. For what? I don't know why they printed the logo on it. Okay. So component. So let me start from square one, shall we? An entity component system. The whole idea is something similar to Unity. Unity uses an entity component system where an entity similar to like a game object, I don't know, it's been a while since I've used Unity. It just contains a bunch of components, right? And then the components can be like arbitrary. They contain state, they contain effects, whatever. So, I think the use case for this would be something like if we were to create like a, why does my shift key not work sometimes? Health component. So this is in the test project. That can just be public. component. This one. Okay. So we can create our own custom component, and it can have state. Let's say state piece health, right? And maybe a max health as well. Now, these don't actually have like values associated with them right now. This is just an example. But we would be able to create like a health component, and then maybe if we really wanted to, we could say another state piece is alive. And then, in order to like calculate if is alive should be true or not, which of these things would we need? Excuse me. It would basically be on state change. It's like this kind of a thing. Public void on state change, and it would need to take in an object and a propose. Are we sending a proposal in this one? We're just sending a chunk, right? State chunk change. No, state chunk change. You know what? I can call it state piece changes. Sure, that's fine. Okay, I'll just throw in a Toto there. So then we have this on state change. And we could do something like we could loop through all of the individual state piece changes. In state piece changes, then say like if state piece change dot state piece is equal to the health, and the health dot value is less than or equal to 0, and it's going to get mad at me because it doesn't know that health is supposed to be an integer, but whatever. Then we could say we would need to be given the manager, right? So we would need to have a reference to the manager. State piece change manager, right? At some point we would need to be given this reference, and then we could say dot change state, and we would give it a new state piece change. We would want to change is alive, and the new value would be false, right? Something like this. Yeah, okay, state piece change is abstract, whatever. But you get the idea, right? So like when the state changes, we can loop through all of the changes that were made. We check to see, hey, did the health change? Is the health's current value less than or equal to 0? And if so, we want to change the is alive state to false. Right? That's the basic idea. And then you could attach this component to whatever entity that you want, be it the player, an enemy, a particularly strong barrel, whatever. And then it would have all of this functionality. Obviously, I didn't like implement a max health or anything, but again, this is just for the sake of example. That's the idea. So the state piece manager thing, I probably want to pass that in as a parameter here. I think I don't know how exactly I want to do that yet. So I'll just say, let me grab that line, throw it here. I don't know how, what? Did it not automatically import this thing? Gimme. Okay. Yeah, it's gonna give me the green squiggle because I haven't assigned it a value yet. Eventually it will get assigned a value. I just don't know if I should pass it as a parameter or if I should just make it nullable and say, hey, you can assign this whatever you want at a later point in time. Right? I feel like that's okay. Maybe. Not sure. I could just not pass it in at all. And then say it's a user problem. The user can figure it out. That sounds like a good idea. I like the sound of making it the user's problem. Okay, so a component, does a component even need... I guess we should probably at least set up these things, right? Maybe not is proposal valid, because that's a separate thing, but like on state change, on proposal created, and on proposal draft created, I think we should probably add to this. And actually... that all makes sense. Okay, yes, so state piece is abstract. State piece change is abstract. Okay. I think that's right. I think that makes sense. So let me just grab all of this. And we'll chuck it into here. And we need to transform these into functions. This is probably a very inefficient way of doing this. This needs, what, a proposal draft and sender. Yeah, give me that. Put it over here. Void proposal. Give me an object. Sender. I keep mistyping my question mark. There we go. Again, this we don't need. Probably be better if I just did this, right? Public void state piece changes and give me that sender. Let me put brackets. Okay. Something like this, right? We can make this abstract. That makes sense to me. An entity does not need to be abstract because an entity is basically just a container for components. Which maybe we can simplify that a little bit later, because having a class basically just be a wrapper around a different one is like, there's room for cleanup there. There's room for cleanup, but for now, let's ignore it. That's a problem for future Stone. Okay. So I think the way that I want to do this is I want to say that these are all abstract. That is not even close to how you spell abstract, but sure. And I actually just want to get rid of these. And then because it's abstract, I'm not supposed to give it a definition. So all of my complaining earlier about not being able to add curly brackets does not matter. Love it. You know what? We can actually make these virtual. And then, yeah, let's just do this. And then we can give them bodies. And say, okay, the user does not, if you make a custom component, you don't have to override these, but you can. Right? So then we'll have the entity. We can have some like add component function, right? Excuse me. We can have all of these in here. Did these? Oh, you can use the virtual keyword in a non-abstract class? Oh, I guess that makes sense. Okay, never mind. Yeah. It's just been a while since I've done that. That's interesting. Okay, so these can actually all be internal. Internal. And then we can say that this is... Yeah, this is just gonna loop through all... So I actually don't need this add component. I thought that I did, but I don't think I do. Component in components, and just say component dot on proposal draft created. Bam. Right. Then we could do something similar for each of these, except use the correct function. So this is on proposal created. I'll just give it the proposal. On state change, give it state piece changes. And then we can do a very similar thing in the entity manager, except we're looping through entities. Entity. Okay, and these do not need to be virtual. Same within the entity. They only need to be virtual in the component because the component is the thing that the user is going to be overriding. Okay, so then in the driver, you could do something to the effect of var change, state change manager equals new state. Did I call it state piece change manager? Whatever. It's kind of a weird thing to call it, but sure. Entity manager equals a new entity manager. And then I can say state change manager dot on proposal draft created plus equals proposal draft, and that goes to entity manager dot oh, that's right, this is I made these internal. We can make these public. For now, we can make them public. I might change that later. On proposal draft created, right? Given the proposal draft. Okay. Sweet, and then I can do the same thing with those other three. So on proposal created, just the proposal, and then I can say on proposal created, whoops, give it the proposal, and then on state changed, we can give it the state piece changes. Pass that into on state change. Okay, there we go. So now we've got the state change manager hooked up to the entity manager, which means if we come back to our health component and I get rid of this, it's going to get mad at me, but that's not what I expected it to do. I can just override. And there we go. Now this is all hooked up and stuff. So now if I wanted to go over here, I could say var entity equals a new entity, entity dot components dot add, give me a new health component, and then I can say entity manager dot entities dot add entity, and boom, we've got an entity component system where you can create custom components, you can add them to the entities, and then they get access to these three events. So when the proposal draft is created, you can modify the proposal draft. And then once that happens, the proposal gets created, and then you can react to that proposal getting created. And then once the proposal is validated and actually happens, and the state changes, you can get the on state change. You can do something in response. Okay. Is proposal valid? Not sure what to do with that yet. I think that's just a developer thing. I don't think I should mess with that. I think that's whoever's going to use this thing, which is going to be me, but it's going to be me later. Okay, and then yeah. I think that makes sense. Okay, so some of the files that I had before I could probably bring back. Excuse me. It's just that I've changed the way that the system works. So like I've changed these three functions, right? Because before I think I only had two of them. I think I only had these two basically. I mean, I like renamed everything and restructured a bit, but the system that I had previously only had these two. So like after the proposal was created and then after the state changed, and I didn't have this one that allowed the proposal to change. Yeah, and then the other thing is that we're now keeping track of the proposal history, which is important. Okay. So at this point, I'm just trying to think if there's anything else we need to add to the core of any of these things. The entity component system or the roguelite framework. I think the answer is no, which means we can start making helper functions and utility stuff and things to make the general experience easier, which is outside the scope of the core, but should still probably be included. But I think that's gonna have to be a task for another day. I think after a full day of work, and now spending 2 hours working on this, I think I'm alright. So, I mean, that was good. Oh, I forgot to turn on my ring light. I have been dark this whole time. Sorry about that. Here. Ugh, I blinded myself. There we go. You finally get good lighting now that the stream is over. No, I feel like that was good work, though. I feel like it's such a bizarre thing. This run does not deserve anything good. It's such a bizarre feeling having like restarted this project over and over and over, and then like this iteration is very, very similar to the last one. I feel like it's getting close. I feel like we're starting to figure it out. Again, I don't want to, get ahead of myself and say that this is the solution, because I've said that multiple times before and it turned out to not be true. But I feel like we're getting closer, at least. So, I may or may not do some more coding on this project on stream. I might just do some stuff off stream, because it's just easier for me to get into a flow state. But I'm excited. Anyway, is there anybody we could potentially raid? I mean, I know I've only got 4 viewers, but maybe there's somebody that I know. Does not look like there's anybody that I know. Some of these streams look fun. All right. I'm not going to do a raid today. So that is going to be it for the stream. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a good one. Peace.